There was a time when my life seemed straightforward. I had the usual dreams, the simple hopes of a young man who believed the world was full of opportunities. It wasn't a perfect life, but it felt like it could be if I just kept moving forward. Then, life began to shift in ways I couldn't have imagined, each turn steering me further from the path I thought was mine. I used to think I had control, making the right choices, doing the right things. But as I got older, I realized that no matter how hard you try, fate has a way of interrupting even the best laid plans. Suddenly, I found myself in a situation where nothing made sense, caught in a chain of events that completely altered the course of my existence. This is where my story truly starts. I sat in the restaurant reflecting on my life. A lot of strange and unpredictable events have come my way over the years. Maybe strange is more fitting than wild. Weird, unusual, different, all seem accurate descriptions. Perhaps everyone's life is filled with odd experiences, only they never speak of them. But that doesn't quite seem right. Unless, of course, everyone has spent time behind bars. I did my time for something I did. I took a man's life. I was sentenced to 15 years to life, but here I am, free. The judge believed there were special circumstances. So, here I am, out in 15 years instead of 20. At least I got 5 years off for good behavior. 15 freaking years. All because I liquidated a man I thought was attacking my wife. If I had known what I know now, there probably would have been 2 bodies, unless I could have just walked away. At the time, I was full of pride, and that's how I reacted. Let me break down how I see the world. People around us behave in certain ways, and we respond. That probably sounds a little simplistic. So, let me give you an example. Imagine you're in a store aisle. A couple stands nearby, and the woman bends over. I happen to be standing close to her husband or partner, and we both catch a glimpse of her underwear and the curve of her backside. I'm supposed to pretend I didn't notice, but it's hard to ignore. The guy sees what I'm looking at and just smiles. How am I supposed to react? I want to joke, "Nice view, can I touch it?" But the man just keeps staring at his wife's behind. I never know what to say or do in that moment. Later, I walk into another aisle, and a woman with no underwear on catches my attention. Before I can stop myself, my body reacts. My mind, though, doesn't know the difference between right and wrong in that moment. I find myself wanting to grab her, but of course I don't. She can choose not to wear underwear. That's her prerogative. But do I have the right to look at her that way? It's a question I can't seem to answer. Then there are the girls and women who wear hip huggers, pants that sit low on their hips, sometimes just inches below their belly button. Get close enough, and you can see the soft fuzz on their lower belly. And to me, it's a turn-on. Movie stars constantly promote closeness, and marriages seem to end and begin again without much thought. Now, love is everywhere, on the big screen, on TV, and in public life. As I go about my day, I catch myself thinking about it when I see women. Some women, though, I wouldn't even approach with a 10-foot pole, unless maybe I'd been in prison for years. Others? Well, there are times when I'd risk it all, even jail, just to be with them. Until I snap back to reality. For younger generations, all these attitudes and lifestyles seem completely normal. But for those of us who've been out of the loop for a while, it's all a bit overwhelming and frankly confusing. I'm not even sure where to start with my story. There's so much I could say, enough for a book. But I guess I'll begin with my marriage to Rita. It was once great, but it ended when I went to prison. Rita and I were married for almost 10 years. I was fresh out of college, just an ordinary guy looking for work. One day I went to a company for an interview. As I waited, I couldn't help but notice the receptionist, Rita. She was gorgeous, and at 22, I still saw women as girls, or ladies, or whatever term fit. We started talking, I asked her out, and while I didn't get the job, I did get the date. I eventually found a job selling hardware. It was a solid gig with a good salary and bonuses. Things were looking up, a steady job, a girlfriend, and a bright future ahead. After just a few months, I proposed to Rita, and we got married by the mayor. I was on top of the world. We bought a house and soon started a family. A son came after a year and then a daughter 2 years later. Life seemed perfect, like something out of a suburban dream. Sure, we had arguments, but we also had a lot of good times. It was the same as what I imagined other families were going through. We spent time with our kids, went on vacations, had barbecues with neighbors. I never suspected Rita wasn't fully committed to me. I was loyal to her, despite plenty of temptations on the road. There were moments I was tempted, but I always put my family first. Then we decided to build a pool. The kids loved it, and so did we. We'd swim together at night, and I remember the first time Rita and I got intimate in the water. It was exhilarating and different with the splashing of water. After that, she suggested we put up a privacy fence so no one could see us. I started putting the fence up right away. It was a big job, so I left my tools out, planning to finish it after my trip. I had to leave town for a couple of days, and Rita was mad about me being gone so much. It wasn't the first time she'd said things like that. I tried to explain again. Being a salesman meant I had to travel. She yelled at me, accusing me of not being there like other husbands. I told her, "If anyone comes for you, we have a tool next to the bed." I didn't get why she made such a big deal out of it. Lots of men travel for work. Maybe I should just quit and take a less-paying job where I could stay home more. But I didn't know if that would solve anything. After I kissed her goodbye and left, she told me not to bother calling, that she might not even be home. It was one of those moments when I wondered what had happened to us. On my first night, I was only about 40 miles from home. Typically, I'd stay at a motel to get an early start the next morning. After our argument, though, I decided to surprise Rita by coming home and doing the extra driving the following day. It was getting dark as I pulled into the driveway, and I noticed a strange car across the street. As a salesman, I paid attention to details like that. The house was dark except for a light in the living room. I tried to open the front door, but the storm door was locked, so I walked around to the back near the pool. That's when I heard Rita screaming. I rushed to the back porch and found her being attacked by a stranger. I didn't fully register her words through the screams, but I grabbed a shovel and rushed to the pool deck. I swung it as hard as I could at the man's head and neck, maybe 3 times, I'm not sure. He fell off Rita, blood spilling everywhere. Rita screamed again. "You liquidated him! You liquidated him!" I think she was in shock. I ran inside, called 911, and she kept screaming and crying until the police and paramedics arrived. There were 2 ambulances, one for the attacker and one for Rita. The police told me they needed to cuff me and take me to the station for questioning. I told them I understood, but I needed to know where my kids were. The officer said Rita told him the kids were at her sister's house for the night. I felt a rush of relief. Thank God they weren't home. I couldn't imagine what might have happened if they had been there. Rita's sister, Thelma, was attractive. 2 years younger than Rita, a bit more outgoing and always dating. She had a curvy body and a pretty face. She often flirted with me when she was around, and I'll admit I thought about it more than once. But I had made a commitment to my marriage, so I didn't act on it. Still, looking back, I sometimes wonder if I should have gone for her instead of Rita. The funny thing was, despite being so charming and sociable, Thelma had never married in all the years I'd known her. At the station, the officers brought me into an interrogation room. I told them I wanted to explain everything before answering any questions. I started by telling them about the argument between Rita and me, how I decided to surprise her by coming home early. I described finding the man attacking her and how adrenaline took over. I grabbed the shovel and hit him with it. I kept saying how Rita was screaming the whole time. I mentioned that just the night before, Rita had told me she wanted me home at night to protect her and the kids, which is why, when I saw the intruder, I reacted the way I did. The officers asked if I knew the man, and I told them I didn't recognize him. When they pressed me, I admitted he looked a little familiar, but I couldn't place him. Then came the bombshell. I was arrested for second-degree murder. I couldn't believe it. I had come home, found a man attacking my wife, stopped him, and now I was being arrested? The officer explained. "We just got back from talking to your wife. She says that man wasn't attacking her. He was her boyfriend, and they were having intimacy." I couldn't process it. "No, that's not possible. Rita is my wife. We have 2 kids together. She wasn't having an affair," I protested, stunned. The officer looked at me with sympathy and said, "I'm sorry, but you eliminated a man tonight. You took the law into your own hands. You'll have to stand trial for his death." I went silent. My mind couldn't make sense of anything anymore. The officers cuffed me and placed me in a holding cell, then removed the cuffs. The next morning, I was taken to court for charges and bonding. I was given $1 million bond, charged with second-degree murder, meaning I'd need to come up with $100,000 to get out. The only way to do that would be to liquidate our savings or take out a second mortgage. I tried calling home, but only got the answering machine. I never made bail. Rita wouldn't take my calls. In fact, she never spoke to me privately again. The next time I saw her was in court, where she testified against me. Apparently Alan, the man I had eliminated, was her boyfriend. She was planning to ask for a divorce and marry him. Rita had worked with Alan for the past few months, and he had started pursuing her. It seemed she had fallen for him and was going to leave me. They had been together for a while. I couldn't prove I didn't know him. How do you prove you've never met someone? The prosecution built their case on the idea that I knew about the affair and wanted revenge. They argued that I saw my chance and acted on it. My wife was the key witness, and I had no defense. I was finished. Rita must have really despised me after what happened with Alan. She cut me off from seeing the kids entirely. The only person who bothered to visit was my brother, Ray. He kept me updated on what was going on with Rita and the kids while I was locked up. My sentence was a minimum of 20 years, possibly life. Ray would come by every few months at first, filling me in on whatever he knew. He told me Rita had sold the house and moved away with the kids, but he didn't know where they went. He also said that she'd managed to turn the kids against me. He hadn't seen them after they left. They were just 7 and 9 at the time. Ray also mentioned that he and his family were heading to Florida, and when I got out, I should come visit them. That was the last time I saw him. Before I went in, I had one visit from my old boss. He told me he thought I had been set up and was willing to testify on my behalf. He was a decent guy. Of course, he had to mention that he had to let me go from my job for legal reasons. I asked him for one favor. I had a 401k retirement account I'd been paying into for 10 years, and I asked him to keep it secret from Rita and her lawyers. He agreed, saying that if they found out, he'd have to turn over the paperwork. But he wouldn't bring it up. He wished me the best and left. Then there was Thelma, Rita's sister. She didn't visit, but she did write to me for a while. She kept me posted on how the kids were doing. According to her, Rita had tried to turn them against me, but Thelma would do what she could to tell them about the good parts of me. She always ended her letters with, "Love, Thelma." I really wanted to believe her. She wrote for about 8 years before the letters stopped coming. I'm not sure if it was because I was transferred to another facility. Oh, they prefer to call them correctional facilities now. I started out in Mansfield Correctional, but when they shut it down, I was moved to the Orient facility. There was another guy named Dan Jones at Mansfield at the same time, and he was transferred to Lucasville Prison down south. I joked that maybe he was getting my mail, but of course we had different inmate numbers. The last letters I received from Thelma, about 8 years ago, said that Rita had sold the house and moved in with her. The kids were okay, but Rita had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a devastating disease. Doctors gave her only a few more years to live. I knew I had every reason to be angry with her, but seeing her suffer, that's not something I could wish on anyone. She was still my kid's mother. Thelma also warned me not to write her back. If Rita found out that she'd been in contact with me, there'd be serious consequences. And now, I was free. I was back in my old hometown, sitting in a cafe, savoring my first cup of coffee in years, breathing in the fresh air. My son would be 24 and my daughter 22. I hadn't seen them in so long, no photos, nothing, since Thelma stopped writing. Every time I saw a young person, I wondered if they might be one of my kids. I hated Rita for what she did to our family, but I couldn't hate my children. They probably thought of me as nothing more than a butcher, but they didn't know the whole story. It was time to figure out what came next. I found a place to stay in a rooming house in the neighborhood where I grew up. First thing on my list was to check in with my old boss, if he was still around, and find out if Rita ever discovered the 401k I had. I'd never told her about it, and it might be the only money I had, aside from the couple hundred I earned in prison. Everything else I made went to necessities. Whatever I had left was a small miracle. I walked into the store. It looked different. I asked the cashier if Jim still owned it, and he confirmed he did, pointing to the back office. I told him I was an old friend and asked if I could surprise Jim. The guy looked me up and down, then nodded and let me through. When I stepped into the office, an older man looked up and shouted, "Jesus Christ, Dan! I was told you were dead." I smiled and replied, "Nope, still very much alive. How's business been, Jim? It's good to see you. You're the first friendly face I've seen in 15 years. We spent a good hour talking. Jim told me about all the changes in the business and about his family. He even offered me a job in the store, saying no one sold hardware like I did. He wished he could offer me a field position, but with my history, I probably wouldn't be able to get bonded right away. I met with my old boss, who informed me that my 401k had been untouched for the past 15 years, steadily earning interest. He hadn't received any inquiries about it and had planned to leave it there until I reached retirement age, at which point he would pass it on to my kids. I asked him to find out how much it was worth since I'd need some funds to get back on my feet. He told me to stop by the following Monday to get the details and also to discuss a new sales position he was offering me. He preferred calling it a sales position rather than a job, and I agreed to meet him then. After we shook hands, I left the store, still wondering why he thought I was dead. I'd have to ask my parole officer next week. He'd be pleased I'd found work so quickly, though I'd heard he could be pretty strict with parolees. With that out of the way, I decided it was time to visit Thelma, Rita's sister, to find out how she and my kids were doing. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I was anxious. The neighborhood hadn't changed much. Some houses looked better with fresh paint and new windows, while others seemed worn down. When I arrived at Thelma's house, I hesitated for a moment before knocking, unsure how to approach her. What if Rita was there? I didn't want to face her. As I stood there, I heard a voice from inside, Thelma's. I turned around, startled, to find her standing behind me. She looked surprised but relieved, and when she saw me, she cried out in disbelief. Her arms wrapped around me in a tight hug as she welcomed me inside. When we stepped inside, I immediately asked about Rita. Thelma's expression softened, and she told me that Rita had passed away 2 years ago from multiple sclerosis. I was stunned. Despite everything, Rita had been my wife for 10 years and the mother of my children. The news hit me harder than I expected. Once inside, Thelma held me again, and I could feel the weight of everything hitting me. She offered me coffee, and we sat down to talk. As we were getting comfortable, she excused herself to check on someone named Danny. I was puzzled. Who was Danny? Thelma smiled, a little embarrassed, and explained that Danny was my granddaughter, the daughter of my daughter, Beth. Beth had named her after me. I followed her into the bedroom where I saw a tiny, sleeping child, no older than 2.5 years. It was overwhelming. This was my grandchild, and the reality of time lost hit me hard. Thelma told me she would let me hold her later, but for now, we needed to catch up. I couldn't stop thinking about how much had changed in my absence. Back in the living room, I sat down with Thelma, who was eager to fill in the blanks about the past. She explained that after Alan came into the picture, Rita had begun an affair. At first, Thelma hadn't thought much of it when the kids visited her while I was away. But as it became a regular thing, she began to suspect something was wrong. She told me she always treated my kids like her own, loving them deeply. I asked Thelma why she never married, given how great she was with kids. She told me that, although she had many opportunities, she never found a man who measured up to her standards, even though she had loved someone once. She'd had relationships, but never the kind of love she was looking for. She was content with the life she had and with the kids she loved. When I mentioned Rita, Thelma's tone darkened. She admitted that she had lost respect for Rita after she found out about the affair with Alan. She believed Rita had given up a good life for nothing, and in doing so, ruined her own life and hurt her children. Thelma's anger was raw, and she confessed that, at times, she had felt like eliminating Rita herself for the pain she had caused. As she cried, I moved closer, offering comfort. I had come looking for answers, but it seemed like the more I learned, the more I realized just how much had been lost. Thelma's words, though full of regret and sorrow, painted a picture of a family shattered by betrayal and missed chances. Once Thelma had calmed down, she continued with the story. Rita had started dating again, likely as a way to get back at me. I'd lost track of time, but I learned that she had the kids about half the time. After a couple of years, though, Rita's health began to decline. Her muscles were weakening, and it wasn't long before she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. She kept working for a while, but eventually it became too much for her. That's when Thelma suggested Rita sell the house and move in with her. Rita went on medical leave and started receiving Social Security, while Thelma continued working part-time at the local grocery store. They managed to make ends meet with the money from selling the house and their combined earnings. 2 years ago, Rita passed away. By then, the kids were already living on their own. I admired Thelma for stepping up, taking care of Rita and the kids through everything. "You're a great sister, Thelma," I said. "What about you, though? You've dedicated so much of your life to others." She smiled, waving off my concern. "It's family, Danny. That's what you do for family. I'm still young. I'm in my early 40s, and I still look pretty damn good." She winked, clearly still proud of herself. I couldn't help but comment, "I don't know about that, but there is someone in the other room who's just as beautiful." We talked about my kids. Thelma told me that Rita had tried to turn them against me at first, but as they spent more time with her, they started asking about me. When they got older, Thelma told them the truth, that their mom had an affair, and I tried to protect her. It was a tough revelation, and they cried when they understood. They still loved me, but they thought I was dead. I was taken aback. How had they gotten that idea? Thelma explained how she had kept in touch with the prison, writing me letters in Mansfield. But one day, my letter came back saying I wasn't there anymore. After making some calls, they discovered I had been transferred to Lucasville. But then, a few days later, they received a call from the facility. Sorry, but Dan Jones, who was transferred from Mansfield, was liquidated in a prison uprising. They were told the body was cremated, and they were offered any records if they wanted them. Thelma and the kids were devastated, and when they told Rita, she didn't show much emotion. I shook my head. The other Dan Jones must have been the one sent to Lucasville. I was at Orient. All this time, I never knew you thought I was dead. I let out a breath, feeling the weight of it all. Those letters from you kept me going for 8 years. Without them, I wouldn't have made it. I half joked. If I didn't know any better, I'd think you were in love with me. Thelma didn't respond to that, but she went on to tell me about my family. She started with Beth and Eddie, who had been high school sweethearts. Beth and Ed had wanted to marry right out of school, but Thelma had warned them they were too young. Beth had insisted, though. She said she needed Ed, especially after losing her father and with Rita's condition worsening. Thelma had reluctantly given her blessing. Ed was working hard as an apprentice at a factory, and Beth was a cashier working part-time to be there for Danny, their little girl. I asked about Mike, and Thelma smiled with pride. Mike went to college, graduated with honors, and now he runs his own business selling computers from home. He's married to Rachel, and they have a beautiful 3-year-old son named Mike Jr. Thelma's voice softened as she mentioned Mike, and I could feel the pride in her words. As she spoke, little Danny came into the room, wiping her eyes and calling for Nanny. She was adorable, and my heart melted. Thelma picked her up, saying, "Danny, there's someone I want you to meet. This is your mommy's daddy. It's your grandpa." I crouched down to her level, trying not to overwhelm her, and said, "Hi, sweetheart, I'm so glad to meet you." I kissed her hand gently, unsure of how to proceed, but already feeling a bond. I knew it was time to leave. Standing up, I told Thelma I'd be going, and she promised to call the kids that evening to let them know I stopped by. She planned to arrange a family gathering so everyone could meet at once, avoiding any awkward moments. I gave her the number for the place where I was staying. There was a payphone in the hallway, and I figured I'd need it, especially since I still had to wait until Monday to find out how much money I had coming my way. Afterwards, I took the bus to a nearby store for a few groceries. My apartment wasn't much, just a small kitchen and a single room with a bed and couch. No TV, but then again, I hadn't watched much television in years. The lights always went out early, and by the time the good shows came on, I was already asleep. As I was walking back to the apartment, I heard the phone ring. No one else was around, so I picked it up. "Hello?" I said. "Is Mr. Dan Jones there?" A young woman's voice. "This is Dan. How can I help you?" "Daddy, is it really you? It's Beth." She was crying. "I'm at Aunt Thelma's. She told me you came by. I thought you were dead, Daddy. I miss you so much." My heart tightened. "Oh, Beth, I love you too, honey. I met the sweetest little girl today. She looks just like you used to." Beth's sobs were barely audible. "Can you come to Aunt Thelma's tomorrow? I already called Mike, and he'll be there too." "Of course, I'll be there," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "I can't wait to see you, sweetheart." I hung up and stood there for a moment, overwhelmed. Tears of joy filled my eyes. I couldn't sleep at all that night. My mind was racing. After 15 years, I was about to see my family again, my children, my grandkids, and even Thelma, who had always been there for me. She'd raised my kids when I couldn't, taken care of them and Rita, and now she was still taking care of everything. What a woman. I couldn't help but think how lucky I was that she'd been in my life, even if it was through marriage to her sister. The next morning, the phone rang again. This time, it was Thelma. She told me she hadn't realized I didn't have a car and would be picking me up at 3:45 p.m. for a cookout at her house. Since it was Friday, everyone was free the next day, and she figured it'd be a good chance for the family to get together. I'd gone shopping earlier, bought a fresh shirt and pants. I even picked out a new pair of shoes. It felt like preparing for an important meeting, and I didn't want to mess it up. When Thelma arrived, she honked the horn as she pulled up. I'd been waiting on the porch swing, and I knew she did it on purpose. I smiled as I walked to the car, my nerves creeping back. As soon as she stopped in front of her house, I hesitated for a moment. 15 years had passed, and my kids were now grown adults. I was almost afraid to step out of the car, not knowing how things would go. Then I heard a familiar voice. "Daddy, Daddy." Beth came running down the stairs, crying. She threw her arms around me, holding me tight. "I missed you so much, Daddy. We thought you were dead." I held her close, my own tears flowing freely now. It felt like a dream. Slowly, other family members appeared on the porch, and Mike was the next to come down. He hugged me too. "Hi, Dad. So glad you're here." We all went inside, and Beth introduced me to her husband, Ed. "I'm so happy to meet you, sir," he said, shaking my hand. "And just so you know, I love your daughter." Beth, still tearful, smiled and picked up little Danny. "You met her yesterday, Dad. We named her after you. Her full name is Danielle." She handed Danny to me, and the little girl wrapped her arms around my neck and kissed me on the cheek. I hugged her back and gently handed her back to Beth. Mike stepped forward then. "Dad, I want you to meet the love of my life. This is Rachel." I looked at Mike and asked, "Is it okay if I give her a hug?" Rachel smiled and replied, "I won't break, Dad. You can hug me anytime." I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her into a big hug. I could feel how much she loved Mike and, by extension, how much she loved me already. Just then, a little boy came up to me. "Hi, Paw. My name's Mikey. I'm 3, but next month I'll be 4. I scooped him up, holding him tight. "It's great to meet you, Mikey." Mikey leaned in close and whispered, "We're going to have a party for you. We're going to the patio." "Okay, Mikey. You lead the way," I whispered back. We all walked outside, and I saw a big banner stretched across the patio that read, "Welcome home, Dad." It was signed by everyone, and I knew Mike had probably designed it himself. I sat down in a chair, overcome with emotion. I couldn't hold back the tears. After all these years, I finally had my family back. This was the happiest I had been in a long, long time. We spent the evening talking about the past, laughing and shedding a few tears. Rita came up in conversation, and it was clear the kids had always loved their mother, though they never quite forgave her for how she had treated me. Thelma asked Mike and Ed to bring up the boxes and bags from the basement, things the kids had left behind. They returned with a few boxes and 2 garbage bags filled with old books, some trophies, and other bits and pieces. As we sorted through the items, I shared the stories behind each one, and the kids started asking if they could keep some. The things had more meaning now that they understood the memories attached. Most of the bags were filled with my old clothes. I asked Thelma where the rest of my things were. She explained that Mike had taken what he could use, and Ed had picked out whatever was useful for his welding job. There were some things that seemed outdated, like the bell-bottom jeans and the silk Hawaiian shirts. We all laughed at how much things had changed. I held up some of the clothes, asking if they could even be used as rags. But Ed quickly corrected me. Denim and silk weren't good for that. When I found a bag of underwear, I joked about whether Mike still wore them, but he made it clear that no man would wear another's used underwear. The whole room erupted in laughter. Mike, Ed, and I spent a few more minutes laughing and reminiscing over the old items. I was getting ready to enjoy dinner when Mike pulled me aside to talk privately. He told me that Thelma had confessed to loving me once, and still did. He shared that she had never married because she had always loved me, but thought I was dead. It took me by surprise, but I thanked him for telling me. I had never thought about Thelma in that way before, but it made sense. She had always been there for me and the kids. We rejoined the group, but I couldn't shake the feeling of what Mike had shared. Thelma kept looking at me, and I could see there was something there, but I wasn't sure what to do with it. I had just gotten out of prison and had nothing to offer. As the night wound down and people started leaving, Mike asked if I needed a ride. Thelma offered to take me home. We said our goodbyes, and then I helped her clean up the leftovers from the party. Once the house was quiet, I asked Thelma to sit with me on the couch. I had some things I needed to ask her. I took her hand and we sat down together. I asked her if it was true that she had loved me. She admitted that she had, and still did. It was hard to hear, but it was also something I needed to know. I told her that I had always cared for her, but things had been complicated. I didn't know how to navigate this new feeling. I wasn't sure if I was ready for a relationship, especially considering my past, but I couldn't deny the deep connection between us. I told her I wasn't sure what I could offer her, but she deserved so much more than an ex-con like me. She understood, but I could see the sadness in her eyes. We both sat there in the quiet, knowing that something had shifted between us, but unsure of where it would lead. I could see Thelma was lost in thought, trying to figure out how to respond. I had no clue what she was about to say next. Finally, she broke the silence. She told me she loved me, not for anything I had or owned, but for who I was. She said she admired the man I was, the way I had always protected those I loved, and that she couldn't hold my past against me. Her only concern was how I felt about her. She asked if I cared enough to be with her, not just physically, but emotionally, if I could see her as a partner, not just a fleeting desire. I didn't know what to say at first. The idea of being with someone like Thelma, beautiful, caring, and so open, was overwhelming. But I didn't need much time to answer. I'd been alone for years, and the thought of being with her, of finally feeling wanted again, was more than I could deny. She then asked if I was ready to take the next step. As she leaned in and kissed me softly, all doubts and hesitations vanished. We kissed again, more passionately this time, and I could feel the electricity between us. When she asked if we should head to the bedroom or stay on the couch, I knew I couldn't wait. I needed her, and I wasn't going to let her go. But then she hesitated, concerned about whether I would be able to perform after so long. I reassured her, joking that the real problem would be keeping it down. She smiled and took charge, unbuttoning my pants, and I could feel her hands on me, making it clear she knew what she wanted. We quickly undressed, and she positioned herself over me. We were both burning with desire, fully aware of the moment we were sharing. As we moved together, I tried to tell her that this wasn't just about the physical release. It was a buildup of years of longing and emotion. But she was lost in the moment too, and everything else faded away. We both reached the peak together, overwhelmed by the intensity of it. For a moment, neither of us could speak. Just the sensation of being so close, of having finally crossed a line we had both been skirting around for so long. The aftermath was messy, but we both couldn't stop laughing at the situation. Neither of us had expected things to unfold this way. We were two people, in our 40s, acting like teenagers, caught up in something neither of us had anticipated. She stood up, still laughing, and hobbled to the bathroom, teasing me about feeling the effects of getting older. In that moment, I realized that the unexpected had brought us both a kind of happiness we hadn't known we were missing. I asked her what I should do, and she told me to stay where I was while she took care of something quickly. When she returned, I couldn't help but smile. She had changed into something more comfortable, and we both laughed at the situation. Thelma said for me to wait while she got her camera. I told her, "Don't you dare. Danny, I know that was just a love, but it was the best love of my entire life. I really mean it." Then she said that her shower wasn't that big and that we really both needed to take one, and that I could go first. When I got up off the couch, she told me that it was going to be my job to clean the stains off the couch the next day. I smiled at her and said, "Yes, ma'am," and headed into the shower. She came into the bathroom with clean towels. I asked her if she was going to take me back to my apartment after her shower, and she said, "You aren't going anywhere tonight, big boy. You made me a promise a little while ago, and I intend on making you keep it." When I got out of the shower, I realized I had nothing to wear. She handed me the brief she retrieved from my old belongings, as well as a pair of pajama bottoms. She took her shower and put on a negligee and a light robe. She looked stunning with her hair all wet. She took me into her bedroom, where she had a queen-size bed. She slipped off her robe, and I could see her bosoms. We both knew that this night was going to be passionate and full of love. I climbed on the bed and pulled the cover quickly off of her before she could grab it. She was laughing as she covered her bosoms with her arms. When we were close together, I started caressing her, and she liked it. "Danny, most men don't know how to love a woman's bosoms, but you're so gentle and caring. You make me want you to caress them, to kiss them, to love them." Time slowed down, and I enjoyed her. I wanted to kiss every part of her body. After a while, I started to please her, feeling her completely. She reached her peak. Her body trembled as I kept going, my face drenched in her. She kept her hands at the back of my head, guiding me as I didn't stop until her spasms faded, and she finally let go of me. I grabbed a towel to clean my face, but the scent of her lingered, unmistakable. Climbing up beside her, I kissed her deeply, wanting her to taste herself on my lips. She didn't hesitate, kissing me back passionately. As we kissed, she felt my arousal pressing against her leg and said, "Danny, I don't know if I can take it again so soon after that. How about I try something different? I'll slide it between your bosoms until I come. I promise to be gentle." "Okay, big guy, but take it easy at first, all right?" she teased. Rolling off of her, I moved close, cuddling up behind her as she turned onto her side. We relaxed together, my body pressed against hers, my Johnson still hard against her A. As we drifted to sleep, I knew the night wouldn't end without more of her. I woke up the next morning to find her still asleep. I slipped into my underwear and pajama bottoms, then headed to the kitchen to brew some coffee. My mind kept drifting back to Thelma. In just a few days, she'd completely changed my life for the better, but it made me question my feelings. Was I in love with her, or was it just the fact that it had been so long since I'd been with a woman? Did I love her because of everything she'd done for me and my family? The answer was clear. I knew she loved me. No one had ever done for me what she had. I realized I wanted to be with her, to share my life with her, to care for her the way she had cared for me. I wanted to make her an important part of my life. Putting all these feelings together, it was clear. I loved her and needed her. It had only been a few days, but I didn't care. I'd spent 15 years alone, and I was done with that. I walked back into the bedroom, stripped off my clothes, and went to her. She told me she loved waking up to gentle touches, kisses, and soft caresses. I chuckled at that, then she said, "Danny, let me go to the bathroom first. If you don't, I won't make it." It should have broken the mood, but somehow it didn't. When she came back, she climbed over me and lowered herself down, a smile on her face. When we got up, the coffee was ready. We sat down and chatted for a while. She glanced over at the couch and said, "Looks like we left a mess. Don't forget your promise to clean it before the kids come over." I nodded, walking over to the cupboard for cleaning supplies. As I scrubbed the couch, Thelma laughed, teasing me for doing it. We showered again, our bodies still buzzing from the intensity of the morning. Afterward, I dressed in my blue Hawaiian shirt and bell-bottom jeans. Surprisingly, they still fit. Thelma came out of the shower and I pulled her into my chest, her without clothes body pressed against mine. She sighed and said, "Danny, not again for a while. I've got things to do today." She kissed me before heading to the bedroom to get dressed. Just as she was about to put on a bra, she saw the look on my face, and I guess I looked a little disappointed. She smiled, set the bra aside, and slipped into a shirt instead. I smiled back. There was a knock at the door, and Thelma peered through the window. "Oh no, it's Brad," she muttered. I asked Thelma about Brad, and she explained that he was someone she dated on and off, but she didn't want to see him anymore. She had me now, and that was enough for her. I reassured her that I'd take care of it, though she seemed concerned. She warned me that Brad was taller and heavier than me, but I told her I had prison experience, which usually keeps people in line. When Brad showed up at the door, he immediately asked who I was and where Thelma was. I responded by telling him I was Thelma's fiancé and that she didn't need him around anymore. He seemed surprised, but I made it clear that I was serious. I told him that I had been to prison for eliminating a man who had crossed me over a woman, and I would do it again to protect Thelma. Brad didn't argue much after that. He just walked away, saying he wasn't willing to go to prison over a woman. When Thelma came out and asked what happened, I told her what he said. She wanted to know if I would go to prison for her, and I admitted that while I wouldn't fight someone just to get her attention, if it was to protect her, I'd go in a heartbeat. She hugged me, pressing her body against mine. It felt good, but we didn't have much time to relax. The phone rang and it was Beth. She had tried calling my place but couldn't reach me, so she asked where I was. I ended up talking to her for a bit. She mentioned a family outing the next day with everyone, including Thelma, going to the zoo and then out to dinner. I promised I'd try to convince Thelma to join, but I knew it would be easy. By noon, Beth had taken my clothes out of the dryer and told me we needed to go shopping because my wardrobe was in bad shape. I didn't have money for new clothes, but she insisted that she'd cover it and I could pay her back later. She liked doing things for me, but I made it clear I wanted to take care of her, not the other way around. She smiled and said that when I could afford it, I could buy her things, but for now it was her turn. We went shopping and I felt a bit out of place, but Thelma knew just what to say to make me feel better. She suggested putting the clothes on a charge card and letting me pay it off later, which eased my nerves. It hit me then how much I needed her. She always knew how to make everything seem easier. The night was a repeat of the one before, passionate and full of energy. We made love twice and spent hours just enjoying each other's company. We could have given newlyweds a run for their money. Life felt incredibly good. The next morning, we got up early and had breakfast. Thelma cooked a simple meal of eggs, potatoes, and bacon, but it tasted incredible. You could tell she put a lot of love into it. The kids arrived right on time. Beth asked if I wanted to ride with her and switch with Thelma on the way back. I smiled as I got in the car. Beth knew exactly what I was thinking, but I played it off. She reminded me it was only a short drive, about half an hour. Ed commented on my new clothes, saying I was finally up to date with the times. I chatted with everyone, but I spent most of my time with Danny, who was in her car seat next to me. I couldn't believe it. My granddaughter. I promised her that I'd push her and Mikey around in a double stroller at the zoo. I loved being with my grandkids, and the thought still felt surreal. At the zoo, I made sure to push the stroller myself. I wasn't about to let anyone take my job as grandpa. Every time we passed an animal the kids could feed, I bought them food. Most of it ended up scattered on the ground, but it didn't matter. The The kids were having the time of their lives with their grandpa. That was all that mattered to me. We visited the petting zoo, where the kids made sure every animal got a treat. Beth and Mike were snapping pictures nonstop, capturing every moment. I looked up at one of the cameras, and I think everyone could see how happy I was. In that moment, I felt like the happiest man alive. On the ride back, I joined Mike and Rachel in their car. They made a great couple, and I was proud of Mike. We had a good conversation, and then Mike asked me for some advice. I told him to always put his wife and kids first, no matter what. Love them like there's no tomorrow. I also mentioned that the best thing he could do was cherish them. I got a little emotional, but Mikey started talking about the zoo again, and that cheered me up. Mike asked how my back was, and I told him it was fine. He laughed and mentioned how uncomfortable the couch at Thelma's had been for him when he used to stay there. I joked that the cots in prison were even worse. We all laughed together. Mike and Rachel told me they loved me and wished the best for me. After stopping at McDonald's to let the kids play and grab a quick bite, we headed home. Back at Thelma's place, we kissed the kids goodbye and promised to see them later in the week. Thelma and I were both exhausted after a long day, love, no sleep, and walking around the zoo all day. I told her I should probably head back to my apartment so I could get ready for work the next day. But she didn't want me to leave. She suggested I could just get dressed at her place and take the bus from there. She didn't want to say goodnight. She added that if I didn't want to make love tonight, we could just cuddle. I told her that if I stayed, I wouldn't be able to keep my hands off her. Even though I was tired, I wanted her. I told her that I could make love to her right then and there. Thelma smiled and said, "Let's do it, Danny. If we start now, we'll be ready for sleep by nightfall." We locked the doors, turned off the lights, and went to bed. By 10 p.m., we were both asleep, and the alarm went off early the next morning. I woke up first, showered, and put on my new clothes. By the time I was ready, Thelma was in the shower. When she stepped out, I kissed her and pulled her close. I wished her a good day at work and told her I'd see her later. Then I headed to the bus stop to go to the hardware store. When I arrived at the office, Jim greeted me and invited me in. He had a lot of updates for me, including 2 job options. The first was a road sales position with a decent salary and incentives, and the bonding company had no issue with my background since my past wasn't related to financial crimes. It was a fast way to get back on my feet. The second option was a job at the local store, earning about $9 an hour, which was less than half of what I could make in sales. However, there were incentives for selling large appliances, which could help boost my pay a little. Jim also mentioned that my 401k had accumulated over $140,000. I was stunned. I had no idea it had grown that much. He explained that my investments had split several times and gained interest over the years. The catch was that withdrawing any of it would trigger taxes and a 10% penalty, but I could access the funds in just a few days. Jim gave me the contact information for the account administrator, who was nearby at the bank, but he also needed me to decide on which job I wanted. We completed all the necessary paperwork for the job, including the bonding forms, since the bonding company required it for any position involving handling money. I mentioned I still needed to visit the bank to check out my options, and I also had to get a driver's license. Plus, I had a parole meeting the following Tuesday. We agreed that I would start work the next Monday, which would give me time to get my license and take care of other logistics. I asked Jim if I could borrow his car or the delivery truck for a road test. He was more than happy to lend it to me, even offering to drive me there if needed. I was taken aback by how supportive and understanding he was. Unlike others who had turned their backs on me, Jim was a boss and friend I respected deeply, and I was determined to work hard for him. That evening, I caught the bus back to Thelma's place. When I knocked on the door, she opened it with a smile. "Why are you knocking? Come on in, old man. How did everything go today? I want all the details." I grinned and replied, "I'll tell you everything, but you go first. I'm curious about your day, too." Thelma laughed and started. "Everyone at work said I've never looked so happy. They wanted to know what happened to make me glow like I was. I told them an old friend had come back into town, and we spent some time together. They said I should marry the guy if he could make me feel this good. Now, your turn." "Well," I said, "I got a job today. I have 2 options. I can take the sales job with the big salary and travel, or I can work in the store for $9 an hour, 9 to 5. She raised an eyebrow. "Which one did you choose?" "Hold on, I'm not done yet," I said. I also found out about my old 401k, and I could take money out of it, but I'd be penalized. I'll explain more in a minute. Thelma was impatient now. Come on, Danny, enough suspense. What did you do? I smiled, knowing she was eager for the full story. Well, I got my driver's license today, too. Jim let me use the company truck for the test. And get this, I got a probationary license. 49 years old with a probationary license. Can you believe it? Now I just need a car. After we're done here, you and I are going to find me a little truck. She gave me a look. Where are you getting the money for that, Danny? Please don't tell me you cashed out your retirement. I sighed. No, I didn't cash it all in, but I did take out some. I had nothing but a few $100 just a few days ago, so this money is a game changer. I want to help my family, my kids, and I want to help you too. I need a vehicle so I'm not stuck taking the bus anymore. Thelma was still waiting. All right, enough with the build-up. What did you do with the money? I leaned in. I took out $10,000 for each of my kids. I know it's not a huge amount, but they could both use it. Maybe Beth can stay home with Danny more if she wants, and Mike can use his for his business or whatever he needs. The point is, I haven't done much for them in a long time, and I wanted to change that. I looked over at Thelma, and I could see the tears in her eyes. She understood. Pride was important to me, and this was my way of taking care of what I could. I wanted to make things right with my family, and even though it was a small step, it felt huge. I went on. I also took $20,000 more and opened a savings account in both our names. You'll need to sign this card and return it to the bank. I'm planning to use about $9,000 to buy a little truck to get around. The rest of the money is for anything you think we might need. Just so you know, my account had over $140,000 in it. I left the rest for retirement. I can't touch that without penalties until I turn 59 and a half. Thelma raised an eyebrow. Hold on, Danny. What about the job? Which one did you choose? And how does this savings account tie into everything? I explained. I was thinking about tapping into the savings through an emergency withdrawal, but it's still a toss-up if I can get past the penalty. If I were married, my tax bill on it would be cut in half. Thelma looked at me, a little confused. Wait a second. You're telling me that we spent 3 days together and now you want me to marry you so you can save money on taxes? Is that it? I chuckled. Well, yeah, that's part of it. But Thelma, I really do love you. It's not just about the great closeness. It's the person you are. You've got such a big heart, and that's what I love. As for the job, if you say yes, I'll take the 9 to 5. I'll be here every night. But if you don't want to marry me, then I'll probably stick with the road job. At least my kids will still be around when I come home for the weekends. She started tearing up. You big goofball, of course I'll marry you. Hell, I would have married you just for the tax break. I love you so much, Danny. So I took the 9 to 5 job. I bought a used pickup truck for about $8,000 and I gave each of my kids $10,000. They were both incredibly grateful and promised to put it to good use. Beth only works 2 days a week now, so Thelma watches Danny on those days. Ed's doing great with his welding apprenticeship, and his income has gone up significantly. Mike's business is booming too. His computer repair shop is in high demand, and he's turning down overnight jobs. He said he didn't want to be away from Rachel and Mikey, and I get it. As for Thelma and me, we got married the following weekend. I postponed starting my new job for a week, and we took a short honeymoon in the Pocono Mountains. We spent our days sightseeing and our nights making love, something we've never stopped doing. In fact, we might need to slow down a bit. Thelma's 42, but she's also pregnant with our baby. Life couldn't be better.